I'm Autumn Brown, front woman of the soul pop band Autumn, a queer science fiction writer, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements living on Dakota and Anishinaabe land currently known as Minneapolis.
And I'm Adrienne Marie Brown, a luscious Black queer witch writer auntie, an apocalyptic cosmic optimist, and a gardener of healing ideas. I live in the land of the Shakori, Skarure, Tuscarora, and Lumbee peoples, currently known as Durham, North Carolina.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World,
our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity.
As a reminder, we have no ads because we're those kinds of movement people. We're fully listener supported and we're snobs about it.
So join our Patreon for exclusive content and to be part of the network that supports each other learning these things.
Also, I have to say, we've been putting even more exclusive content on Patreon than normal. Like,
it's true.
We've really upped our game. There's a lot more happening there than used to be happening there.
Yeah, like our top culture now is happening more and more on Patreon, and we're having our intimate conversations with each other, clips from people. I think we're really trying to make it worth your while.
Yeah. So just think about it and then act on it.
Sister Ray, how are you today?
Well, today I'm well. I had an interesting experience where I woke up from a really disturbing dream this morning.
Eek.
And then needed to go back to sleep because of it.
Totally. I know you're like, I got to clear the dream. I got to go back and clear the dream place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was like and it was, fortunately, my kids don't have school today and everyone was going to be sleeping in anyway. And so it was possible for me to be like, okay, it's 7:10 a.m. I'll just go back to sleep for an hour.
But with your kids, it's like extreme sport. You could go to sleep till noon.
Literally. It's so funny. It's so funny how much has changed. What changes hormonally when they're teenagers and suddenly they're just like passed the fuck out until 11 a.m.
Everything is changing.
Or sometimes they'll get up, but then they'll be up like in their rooms, like reading on their phones, and it's just like, oh, you are awake, but you're just not coming out of your room. But anyway, so I had this really intense. There were multiple layers to the intensity of the dream, but the final sequence of the dream involved me. I was like in my car with my daughters at night, somewhere in what felt like it felt like South Minneapolis, but it kind of felt like an industrial zone. And I got out of the car and then could hear the sound of like a rioting crowd coming towards us from blocks away and realized, I need to get us out of here before we are trapped inside of our vehicle, inside of this mob. Because it was like a mob. It was the sound of a mob coming and starting fires. And it was like so scary. And so I get in the dream, my daughters had also gotten out of the car. I made them get back in the car. I get in the front seat and then I'm like weaving through these parking lots and alleyways trying to figure out how do I get out of this place before we're overwhelmed by this mob. And then I woke up and I was like, that was horrible.
When you went back in, were you able to like get back in that dream and finish it? Or did you have to go clear it elsewhere? Okay. I always try to do that. I'm like, okay, I'm going back in. And I'm like, girl, it's not how it works. You don't get to just plug back into that channel.
That's not how it works. Thank God, actually.
No, I always wish I could go. I'm like, I'm going to go fix that.
So, it was a weird way to start my day. But then I had my morning coffee. I had a sweet morning call with my sweetheart and a couple of sweet messages from besties. And just, I feel like I kind of got to recalibrate. And here I am, and I'm so excited. We haven't had an episode recording in a while where it's just the two of us talking to each other.
I know. I'm excited.
So I'm pleased that we get to just kiki with each other.
Well, and I want to say, just so that yourself and your dream self know this, I trust you more than almost anyone on earth to actually successfully handle that situation.
Thank you.
So I'm like, you definitely got them out of there, and it may have involved, you may have gotten someone who had to like run up the stairs in a building, but you definitely are safe.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like I'm definitely the Brad Pitt of my life,
Yeah.
Like Brad Pitt from
Pitt.
like World War Z. Like
World
I'm
War Z.
definitely
Obviously that Brad Pitt.
I'm that version of Brad Pitt, not like real life Brad Pitt, but like
not at all
World
Gross,
War Z
but
Brad Pitt, or like I'm like the John Wick of my life. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
but definitely not the real world version. Totally.
Right. Oh.
Sad.
Anyway, yeah. How are you? Let's not talk about any other men.
I know. I was like, sadly, we'll get to that, but like men need solidarity with themselves.
Men,
okay.
like what is going on with you?
Well, it's so sad these days to bring up like, roughly any man. It's
any man.
So and you're just like, dang. Okay. I'm feeling really good. This week I have felt very poured into from various places. Like I have felt like a lot of work I've been doing for a long time. Like it's been like one of those sweet weeks where it's like a lot of it has been, I don't know, flowing back towards me like, hey, good job. Good job. You did a good job. And that's been sweet. And then today we're recording. I love that we're recording a conversation about solidarity today because it is a boycott day. And it's I want to get into talking about that. But for me, I'm really moved by how many people I see responding to this and engaging with it. Our whole family is in on it. All my friend groups are in on it. And so it feels like, after a couple of months of just like flailing about, like watching things go down, it feels like we're starting to cohere into something. And I love that feeling.
Mars
and then
Station Direct, dude.
Mars Station Direct, baby.
Really
we're like, okay. Now we mad, but we're
like,
focused.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I also have like my pajamas on, my bonnet on. Like I just want it to be comfy. Like I want to feel like I'm on your couch.
I'm also in my pajamas still.
Yeah, let's go, sister. Like we've done something right this Friday.
Right.
So so yeah, I'm feeling really good. Also, yeah, I've had very sweet times with my sweetie, including yesterday. I went to get some piercings. I was like, I need some new piercings. I need some new situations. So I got this,
cute.
my nostril redone, which I don't know where it had fallen out at some point, and I was like, it's gone.
Yeah, I was like, why is that new? But okay, it had gone away.
Exactly. It had fallen out. So I've just had the septum for a long time.
Right.
And I was like, it's not supposed to be just a septum. It's a septum and that.
Right.
And then I got these two little tiny moon studs on my upper lobes. And our whole thing is like, we don't have our lobes pierced, or we haven't had them pierced for a long time. I had got mine pierced when I was a kid.
Lobes. Yeah.
Yeah. And who knows? I was going to buy like these really cute earrings. And then I was like, actually, let me get the cheapest thing you have that still will be safe on my ear to see if it actually takes.
Yes.
But it feels really sweet. I've been wanting a way to wear dangly earrings without surrendering the erotic zone of my earlobe. So we'll see if this works or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm
I wish
excited
you
to
luck
have
with that. I feel like I basically am still wearing the same stud that I got pierced with in this lobe. I will occasionally switch it out for a fancy earring that I will wear for just a few hours.
Yes.
And then I'll go right back to the hypoallergenic titanium, whatever thing that this is, because I'm like, I am so sensitive. I'm so sensitive.
Yes.
I can barely wear
a blessing.
anything.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know what? My body has a low tolerance for toxin, and that's okay.
That's a good thing.
That's the way I've been orienting towards like my immune disorders and everything right now. Is I'm like, guess what? My body doesn't like all of this microplastics. My body doesn't like it. Don't poison me in my food.
Stop poisoning
I don't
me.
like that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have been reflecting recently on, and this has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. I don't think.
Exciting.
But I have been reflecting on how truly sensitive I am as a person.
You
and how
you really are.
How armored up I've been for how many years. That makes it really hard for me to notice how sensitive I am. And
I love this, sister.
But it really like the safer I feel in a relationship, the more clear it becomes like how truly sensitive of a little tenderoni being I am. And it's just been so funny to be like, oh, my feelings are hurt.
I love this. And I love this for my fire sign people, like when they reach that moment of being like, oh, wait, because I'm like, yeah, if you think of yourself like a little ember where like anyone who blows on you could like blow the whole situation up. Right. It's like, I think that's a very sensitive way of being. You could be a wildfire very quickly.
I could be a wildfire very quickly.
Exactly. Whereas I'm going to put that out. Mute, you know, because I'm like, I'm just earth. I'm just going to lay here, babes. I'm like, but I feel things, but I feel it in a tectonic way. All right. So now that we have pigeonholed ourselves once again into the tiny boxes of astrology, here we are. Sister.
They're just so convenient, those boxes. I love them.
Well, I love them. You know, I'm like, it's one of the only systems I found that like consistently works.
It's just factual.
Lately, I just keep asking people a little bit more, and it's so cute to be like, all the Tauruses are like, I don't really know, but like maybe Taurus. And the Gemini is like, I don't really know. But it's just so funny to be like, you're acting exactly like the thing.
Right.
Even if you don't participate.
Right.
You just are.
Right.
Anyway, another day. So we wanted to talk about solidarity beyond movement. And I texted you this, sister, because I have a lot of thoughts on it, maybe too many. But I know that it's something that we both have talked about many times in many different ways and touched into. And it feels like a conversation. I think it would benefit our listeners to just get to tune into and think through it themselves as well. Mm-hmm. And I have some thoughts coming into it that I want to like bounce back and forth with you. And I also want to hear what you're bringing into it. And I thought maybe we could start with just like, what do you mean by it? Like, what do I mean? You know, like when I'm thinking about,
I was like, why don't we begin just by slowing it down a little bit? Great. Maybe just by both saying like, when you say solidarity beyond movements, what do you mean when you say solidarity? What do you mean when you say movements? And then what are you referring to when you're talking about the beyond space?
I love that. So for me, I'll say when I say movement in this context, I really mean like the organized left, like folks who are like, I have come into this world, developed my analysis that I am part of formal structures that are trying to change the world. I see myself as an organizer, and I see that becoming an organizer is the only way to make change, or is the way, right?
Right.
And so I feel like I'm thinking about what does solidarity, which to me is, I always think of that quote, the Aboriginal quote. It's like, if you are coming to save me, then I'm good, basically. But if you're coming because you understand that your liberation is bound up with mine, then we can move together.
Right.
So to me, I'm thinking of solidarity that way, where it's like being in relationships of shared liberation intention, and being in relationships where like, I see your humanity and I know that mine is bound up with it. And together we're going to get free. Together we're going to make things better. And then the beyond place is like, I think that we need forces of change that are so much bigger than what the organized left is currently able to attend to, or is currently holding. So I'm like, how do we, or able to mobilize, or, you know, so there's the way I want to be in the conversation. You know, I was like, I want to honor the organized left, honor movement, and there is incredible work happening there. And I want to notice what are our patterns of struggle. I want to think about how we decentralize. You know, like, I'm like, how do we decentralize and go beyond that space? And imagination. So yeah.
Well, I just want to flag.
Flag it.
I just want to flag for like at some point to circle back to later in the conversation.
Awesome.
This notion of decentralizing, because I would argue, on unpopularopinions.com, I would argue that the left is too decentralized currently. And that is part of why we're having such a hard time moving in solidarity with one another and drawing people into the left and moving in solidarity with folks outside of the left. And so
I actually don't think we have an argument there. I think, so I think we'll get to, I'm excited to talk about that.
Let me finish what I was going to say.
Oh, okay, good. I thought it was tangent. I was like, girl, if you're on a tangent, I'm like, I got you.
I'm like, I think there is a conversation to be had about like what how did we get to a point where we are so decentralized that we don't, we're lacking in capacity to be moving from a shared strategy, which I think is a part of solidarity. And how do we centralize our strategy so that we can actually move more effectively in solidarity on the left and then beyond the left? That's the I want to return to.
Okay, good.
Right.
I'm excited. We can tussle. But so then for you, when you think of solidarity beyond movement, what do those words mean for you? And
yeah, I think like solidarity always does feel like it's about, I love you bringing in the Aboriginal wisdom. I also love that every time we talk about this on the show, we can't ever remember exactly how it said. But and then you're like, I'm good, and I'm like, that's basically what it is. It's so funny. But I love that wisdom, and I think that there is also that piece about the sort of like Black feminist articulation of understanding ourselves to be bound by and accountable to a common vision, and that that sense that a reformist sensibility of our organizing would lead us towards a vision where everyone gets to opt into and access the same privileges that white people get. That's what we're trying to get, right? Whereas like a vision, a solidarity vision is about saying we're actually picking a different starting point for what we are moving towards. And we're not trying to move everyone towards being able to hold a dominant position in an oppressive system. We're actually trying to move everyone towards a qualitatively different version of life. And I think so that's my sort of like informed by my own organizing lineages. That's my kind of take on like, what do I think solidarity is? And I just want to presence that I don't think that that's the way most people understand what that word means. You know, I think for a lot of folks, I think a lot of folks maybe understand solidarity more in the practical application of like how you show up for each other's work on the left, right? Like what is the practical way that we like come alongside each other, or what is the practical thing that like my organizing group can offer to your organizing group, you know? And so I want to get into that too. I think that's important to talk about too, of like what's the actual practical application of solidarity. Yeah, and then movement is such a beautiful, spacious word. Actually, it's such a beautiful, spacious word that includes, folks who are hardcore organizers and came up inside of an organizing lineage that they can actually identify, and includes people who are more like activists, people who are artists, people who are cultural workers, you know, like I think one of the things that I notice in particular in my local movement ecosystem is like how many people are a part of the movement ecosystem that are actually not doing organizing explicitly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
that feels big.
That it feels important. And I feel like solidarity is one of the ways that we get to really expand our view of like what it looks like to be a part of a movement for change. Yeah. And when I think solidarity beyond movements, what comes to mind is, national park workers.
Exactly.
Federal employees, city council members, you know, people who we've been sort of trained on the left, consciously or not, to see as opposition, but are not. And, and, you know, I feel like I know I've quoted this wisdom on the pod before, but I always think about LaDonna Redmond, who is a environmental justice organizer based here in the Midwest, who used to often say, like, we get so focused on the 2% of people who will never agree with us that we lose sight of the 98% of people who are ready to be moved.
Yes.
And that to me is the conversation I feel like that we're about to have, is the like that 98%.
What about the 98%?
What about the 98%?
Exactly. Yeah, sister. I really love that. You know, I think even as we're talking, I think something that emerges is like, we could call this conversation solidarity that grows movement, like grows that broader movement as much as like beyond. Because I'm just like, ideally a movement is something that is growing and growing and growing until it is unstoppable. And I think of this General Baker quote. General Baker was a Detroit-based organizer, and he always said, you know, everyone's talking about, how are we going to get the people here? How are we going to get the people here? And I'm thinking, what are we going to do when they show up?
Right.
And I'm like, yes, like
something has to be happening.
Something has to be happening. And like, what are we going to, like right now is one of those moments where I'm like, there's a lot of people who I think are willing to show up in ways that they maybe have never done at a moment when those who are often in organized movement are the least available to like welcoming new people and welcoming new energy.
So
right?
true.
Because there's so much like, yeah. I mean, it's been a great case study just watching this boycott unfold and people being like, well, is this the perfect boycott? What are the demands? It needs to be longer. It needs to be this. It needs to be that. And I'm like, beautiful.
Did you organize it?
Right. Well, and this is part of my thing is I'm like,
organize your own boycott.
Well, exactly.
Sorry.
I think part of it is that. No, part of it is that this energy, right? Of like when people are looking at something and being like, I want to critique that, rather than being like noticing like we've been in a fucked up situation now for quite some time, and we haven't called for this level of economic boycott, or we haven't been in this practice, or we've tried it for specific issues. Now we're trying something broader to harness the energy that people are in. So what does it mean to get ready to be there? So I also want to name, I found the quote. It's Lila Watson. It's attributed to Lila Watson. If you're coming to save me, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. If you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together.
You did it.
And I was like, I believe in us.
I'm so proud of you.
So yeah, you know, I think, maybe we can start with this piece around movement, the organized left, the organized movement spaces now. And I'm curious because I feel like you've been in deeper more recently into like the facilitation work of those movement spaces. But like, I feel like I'm noticing this pattern of like movement really struggling to be sanctuary and struggling to connect with each other. And
oh yeah.
Right. So I'm like, I see a lot of people trying really hard, thinking really hard, strategizing really hard. Like I see so much effort, but I'm also noticing this pattern that's like, yeah, it's like, oh, we can't rely on existing structures of movement right now to harness this moment. Yeah. That's my take.
It's a tough moment. It's a tough moment. It's the left has been, I think the tide is turning, but I think the left has been in a pattern of eating itself alive. And I often over the last, I mean, you've heard me many times, I'll end a facilitation and come over on the text thread with you and be like, we just don't even need an opposition.
No.
You know, we don't need an opposition because, and one of the patterns that I have witnessed is people at some point, and I feel like I can take partial credit for creating this problem. You can too.
Me too. I'm always like, I take credit, honey. Yeah, we were all up in there.
many of us were all up in the culture shift that happened in the last 2 decades that produced this moment. So I'm not saying this from a place of like, this is where you got me fucked up, everybody, but really from a place of like, this is where we lost our way. And what I'll say is that many organizers on the left relate to their workplaces as their primary sites of organizing. And that is an example of a way that we lose our way. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be making our workplaces better. I've made an entire career on making workplaces better. But when we get into a place where something goes wrong in our workplace, and we start using language like eugenics and violence to describe the behavior of people who are actually our comrades and allies. That's a great example, I think, of like, oh, you've really lost your way inside this moment right? Because these are like, violence is a powerful word. Violence is a powerful word. It's also a word that refers to something. You know, it's like, Crystal, words mean things. Words mean things. And so when we use it willy-nilly to just describe anything that makes us upset or uncomfortable or seems kind of vaguely unfair, then it's like, that's not rigorous, and it's not useful. And it doesn't actually advance our great visionary aims on the left. It confuses us. It creates distrust. It fosters a lot of disconnection rather than like a willingness and ability to work in collaboration and grow together. And I do think, though, we're reaching a point. I've certainly seen it in my work. I feel like we're reaching a point where there's starting to be, it doesn't take a lot of people, but there's starting to be like a small growing percentage of people on the left who are like, we don't want to do it this way anymore. We need to actually behave as though we need each other. We can't afford to keep tearing each other apart, tearing each other down in this way. And I guess I'm curious to know how and what you see from your vantage point. The one other thing I guess I'll add is, and I'm curious to know what you think about this. And we've kind of talked about it a little bit before, but to me, the role of the internet is undeniable in how we've ended up in this very navel-gazing place where people are not necessarily even doing real organizing, but feel themselves to be. And and I don't in any way, I want to be clear that I don't in any way mean to denigrate the very real things that are possible via the internet. Things that are made possible, ways into solidarity work that are made possible by access to social media networks and all those things. But there is a toxicity that entered into movements within the last 2 decades also that doesn't seem familiar to me based on what I've heard stories about previous decades of movement work on the left.
All of that resonates a lot for me, sister. I feel like, I often said this when I was actively facilitating. It's like movement space. We are still a microcosm of the world. Like any place you drop into a specific workplace or a specific focus is still a microcosm of the world. So we're still swimming in capitalism, white supremacy, toxic masculinity. We're swimming in all of that. And so when the internet came, and I think, we weren't like on guard, like this could be a device of great infiltration, like easy infiltration. You don't have to even have an intention to infiltrate at this point. You can just slip in and be like, I threw a Molotov cocktail into your meeting.
Right.
Bye. So I've been thinking a lot about how to return to tenderness inside of movements and what accountability really looks like inside of those spaces. And I've really been thinking about, Loretta Ross has this quote about cults versus movements, where she's like, a group of people moving the same way, thinking the same thing is a cult. A group of people thinking different things, moving the same way is a movement.
I like that.
And I always love that quote because I'm like, to me, the movements that I'm longing for and the strongest movements I think we've seen throughout history, they're not ones that are always initiating the grand event or initiating the big moments, right? I'm like, I think when movements are healthy, the people are initiating their own moments, but then they have folks who are coming in and being like, we understand how to meet this moment and how to help it grow and how to help it connect to others, connect to other ideas, movements, people. And in that way, like for me, my critique of this came with emergent strategy, right? Where I was like, we have forgotten how to be adaptive. The conditions are changing. And a good movement is one that can be like, I see the conditions changing. Let's meet the people where they're at and help them through this. And I think, part of what stops us from solidarity is when we see something, we're like, oh no, I didn't come up with that. My plan didn't come up with that. We don't have our own 5-point agenda. So it's not a good thing.
Right. Rampant individualism.
So deep, but we don't see it that way. So it's like some of it is mirror, right? It's like the movement, the people should hold up a mirror always to movement. I keep thinking right now that there's so many front lines that like movement couldn't even take them all on. It's like everyone's working on different things, but there are these new emergent front lines every day. So how do those of us who think of ourselves as part of movement be like, my job is to give people something more impactful to do than doom scrolling. more impactful to do than just yelling at people on the internet. Because that internet culture, that technology of being like my way of doing movement is to just show up online and tell people how wrong they are. Like that is literally anti-solidarity behavior.
And it's not organizing.
It's not organizing. And I've yet, I'm always waiting to hear like someone telling me that, yeah, that's the thing that changed me, or that's the thing that got me involved. But I just haven't heard it yet. So I'm like, maybe I'm missing the pocket of people who are like, yeah, I was motivated by that person calling me a piece of dumb shit in my comments, but I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard it. I mean, I suppose.
I haven't heard it.
Right.
But I think the last thing I want to say on this, and then I want to get into this decentralization piece because it feels like core to all of it, is I think there is an internal transformation that's necessary for the level of sustained external change we're trying to pull off in the world. And I feel like one of the things that's happened in the left is people have been like externally focused. It's like, you need to change, you need to change, y'all need to change, you need to change. Instead of like, what we're asking people to do is say, oh, I need to change. And the more people who take that on of like, I'm part of what needs to change for all of this to change, and I'm willing to do something, right? That's why I'm like, oh, I try to send these announcements to our family. So I'm like, it's not enough to be upset about it. You need to be willing for something to change. What are you willing to change?
Right. The internal transformation piece, where my brain goes with that, is learning to learn and learning to change.
Yes.
And that those are practices that require a lot of rigorous engagement. And our listeners know, that like the way that I think about this right now is very much through the lens of martial practice. And I've had these really interesting moments in the last couple of months in particular of receiving corrections from my teacher and noticing, just now I'm far enough along in my martial training to really notice what happens in me when I receive a correction. And if I respond defensively, what are the conditions that are likely to make me respond defensively to being corrected? What are the conditions that are likely to help me just respond in the more appropriate way to being corrected? Because in our martial context, like if your teacher gives you a correction, the only appropriate response is "Thank you, sensei." That's the only appropriate response, right? You can have all the other things happen inside of you, like all your defensiveness and reactivity. And maybe if something feels unfair, you can follow up later and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's no pathway for reconciling the other feelings that happen. But in the moment of receiving the correction, you're just supposed to express gratitude and know that this means that I should not make that mistake again. That's the point, right? And it's a gift to receive that feedback. That's not our orientation typically on the left. And there's a whole, I think our beautiful conversation that we just had with Eve Ewing is a great explication as to why, like, we're not taught to learn in ways that would produce that kind of response of being able to like really trust where the correction is coming from. Right.
Yeah. That's right.
So I think about that often in relationship to the left and the internal transformation you're describing that's required in this moment also requires like a truly humble orientation to being corrected. The only way that you can change, I believe this, the only way that you can meaningfully change is through correction. The only way that you can meaningfully learn is through correction. You also learn through practice and failure, right? But the way that like children learn to walk by like getting up and falling down, getting up and falling down, getting up and falling down, but they also get supported. And then there are other skills that we have to learn through being told, no, you didn't do it you don't do it that way, you do it this other way. Like if you're learning to drive a car, you have to be corrected, right? Like if you're learning to, particularly when we're learning to do things that could potentially put other people's lives at risk, it's really important to be, to receive supervision and correction in that process. But we have driving a car, flying a plane, like any skill set that you would have to learn that involves that, where if you do it wrong, other people could die, like, right? So we often don't think about our organizing tactics that way. But like actually, It's like, what's at stake? And are we willing to be corrected in the process of learning because we understand what's at stake? And what I've seen as a facilitator, an organizer, and a coworker in workplaces on the left. I mean, I've seen this in every workplace I've ever been in. People's inability to receive correction and feedback is one of the places that creates the most contraction. And it's like a dangerous kind of contraction, I think, because I just don't think that over there on the right, I think that they're very committed. I mean, they're very committed to hierarchy over there, so it's not really a fair comparison. They're very committed to authoritarianism. It's not a fair comparison. But one of the things that they're not doing, I don't imagine, is complaining about being corrected.
Yeah, I feel like, I think that they complain about being corrected on their worldviews, right? Right. But not within their movement spaces. It's like they are big tent. They're just like, oh, you think that Nazis and you think that, you guys, it's so deep to see right now how many people are like, yeah, we can come together under this big tent of destroy the world. And I'm like, great, we need to come together under a much bigger tent of protect the world, save each other, love each other. Like, we need to be able to see each other's humanity.
But I have to say, I think it's important that we clearly stake and claim and understand this. They don't see what they're doing as that.
Right.
They do not.
I think we did cover that with Roan, right?
They do not. They do not see it as that. And so what I'm pointing to is the way that they work together. Right.
Yeah.
I don't imagine. Who knows? I mean, I'm not inside their organizations, but I don't imagine that they have the same level of sensitivity to being corrected that we see over here on the left.
What I'm going to say right now is I actually don't know, right? I'm like, I don't think of our opposition as being like a benevolent space of trust or any of those, I actually don't know. I think what you're raising is something that I'm like, I'm not
saying benevolent. I'm not saying benevolent. I'm talking about what I'm really talking about is rigor. I'm talking about the ability to actually receive direction and what we know that they are good at is organizing themselves and organizing each other. And you have to be able to receive direction in order to do that. And I think that that's one of the things. I'm not saying we should be replicating any aspect of their movement in particular, but we do have to be willing to learn from our opposition. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah. So I think I want to go kind of in a different direction. I think what's happening for me is I'm noticing that I'm like, I don't want to talk about them at all. I feel like I don't pay enough attention to what they're up to. So I'm like, oh yeah. But what you're saying about rigor, I'm like, I think there's something here that I want to tease out because
Let's slow it down. Tell me what's happening inside of you right now.
Well, what's happening inside of me is
I'm noticing some reactivity and I want to kind of slow it down.
Yeah, I think what it is I'm really interested in talking about how beautiful it is to see people awakening into the possibility that they can create change and how I wish that the left was able to respond to that better. And I can see there are ways that we're not able to, but part of it is because I'm like, I think we're like, as soon as someone is like, something's awakening in me, we start a rigor path. We start here's all the ways to be in movement. There's only one way to do organizing. And it becomes very there's only one way to do it. And now we're correcting each other nonstop around that path. And I'm like, I actually think something else is happening. And I think it's what happens when big movements occur, which is there's people who are like, I never thought of myself as an organizer, and I don't know that that's my calling, but I am willing to show up right now in the street because they just took my friend's job, or they just kicked me out of my office, or they just cut off my Medicare, or I can't afford food for my kid. This thing starts to happen where people are like, yeah, I never thought of it, but yeah, I will boycott the buses and I will work with people to figure out how people get around. I will participate in something that doesn't actually require me to go the full path of becoming an organizer, but I'm willing to participate. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how do we start to recognize when we're in a moment like that, where it's like people are willing to show up. And what we don't want to do is say, you have to jump on a life path here. And there's only one way to do that life path correctly. Although I think that, so it feels like we started having two different conversations. I think maybe that's what's happening, because there's one that's about the left. And I, for me, I wanted to just spend a very little time touching on the left here, but I'm much more interested in like kind of what's happening beyond the left, and then thinking about like how do we grow to meet what's happening.
Well, yeah, but I'm noticing the reason why I asked is not, I don't want to know so much what's happening in your head. I want to know what's happening in your body, because what I noticed is we started having what felt like a disagreement, and you were like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about them. I don't know anything about them. And it sort of felt like, oh, it seems like you're activated. It seems like you're angry. And I want to just slow it down and be like, I was trying to name something really clearly about the thing that I believe is actually happening over there, that I think is there's evidence that that's happening over there that we do need to pay attention to. And I feel like my feeling is like, I'm like, oh, I feel like you're shutting me down. I feel like you're upset, or you feel like you're having a hard time with me disagreeing with you. And I'm like, let's just slow down. What's happening?
I feel like I think it's like, I don't even know if I disagree with you on that. I'm just like, I think that there's so much chaos. I think even saying that there's another side that is organized feels like a big leap. I feel like there's another side that there's pockets of a lot of organization. And then they understand how to harness all these other people who are like, I never read Project 2025, but something about the way that they are responding to my need is calling me in. And I'm like, I'm talking like, to me, if there's anything to learn from the other side, is that piece where I'm like, they've got their organized people, but then they are able to really harness the disorganized masses in a way that we are not doing, or we haven't been doing. And I'm like, I think this is a moment where we could begin to do that. But yeah, I think then I was like,
maybe let's just take a couple deep, let's just take a few deep breaths together.
Okay. Yeah. We just had a moment where we had to actually pause and check in with each other, because the conversation was going in multiple directions and we weren't clear on it for ourselves. I want to name that because, Autumn, you were able to pause us, notice that I was having a reaction in my body, like from a distance, and love me enough to be like, no, slow down more than that.
I was also having a reaction.
Slow down. You were, but I was just sort of like, I don't care about your reaction, girl. I'm having my reaction. And you were able to care for me and be like, no, I care. And I actually want us to get right with each other. And that feels like the kind of tenderness that I want to see in our movements, which is like, hold on.
Wait.
Wait, this is it. I'm like, hold on. We might be disagreeing with each other, but slow down. I see that it's having an impact on you. It's activating you in a way that's like, that's not how you build more, deeper, together, tender thing, right? Container. So I feel like I just want to name, I would like, we keep the privacy of our conversations, but I really want to name, I feel very honored by how you just took leadership in that moment and helped us slow down and notice it.
Sister.
I feel like crying too.
I love you
because I feel so tender. Like, I love you so much. And I always want you to know, like, I have such a deep respect for what you, like, how you're seeing the world and what you're seeing. And I'm willing, I'm always willing to be like, I don't know, girl, I might be wrong about this, but my heart is saying, my gut is saying.
Right.
And to be in a conversation where it's like, how do we have a space where our big brains can tackle things while our hearts stay connected?
Oh my God. It's so real.
And we can bring in different perspectives.
First of all, I love you so much. And I'm so glad we were able to do that together. And
me too.
Thank you for going with me into the slowing down. And I want to say that, like, I feel one of the things I've been struggling with in movement work, like when you said earlier, you're like, you're closer in, you're doing more facilitation, or you've been doing it more and more recently. I was like, I have. And I also feel like I've been struggling with the way that I feel not aligned politically with so many of the spaces that I've been called in to work with.
Yeah. I loved it at the beginning. We're both like, yeah, we know that we have some responsibility for how movement has shaped. One of the things I think about a lot is like, I did not mean to grow fragility. I meant to grow fortitude, but I wanted gentleness. And I feel like somehow I and others contribute to creating like this space where people are so fragile that they can't even be in a space together, much less do anything together. And I'm like, I said that in Loving Corrections. I'm like, from fragility to fortitude, like we need to make this change Like we need to. And I feel it in myself though.
As a healing justice organizer, I join you
Yes.
in the, I'm just like, this is not what any of us were intending to create
Nobody
when we
was
started
trying to do that,
making
babes.
practice spaces at conferences. Like
Exactly. That's not what we were thinking of. But I do feel like I'm like, oh, there's a need to say that, to be like, so many of the best facilitators and movement people and organizers I know have opted out of that space because it has become so toxic and so navel gazing. And then the organizers I know who are left in there are like, help. Like we're trying so hard to hold this space with some compassion. So I think there is a conversation to have around like the state of movement today. And maybe we're, that's a lot of what this is. But then there is something about whether or not we're ready, whether or not we're functional, whether or not movement can detoxify in time. It's time.
It's time.
Now it's time.
Yes.
And, I've been watching Paradise, which is this new sci-fi show where it's like an apocalyptic thing. And it's like, it's time now. Like, it's like, it doesn't matter what you thought you have planned or whatever else. The tsunami's coming, the bad is coming, and it's time now. You're going to either do it or not do it.
Right.
And I keep thinking that right now, that I'm like, it's time now. Our whole lives, we have been preparing for the people to be ready to rise up and claim a different reality for this place. And it's time.
It's time now.
And when I feel into that, I'm just like, oh, like we're going to show up in all the different ways.
Right.
And I keep thinking about the exceptions. I keep feeling so tender. And it feels risky. Oh, before I even go down that, sister, that feeling you're talking about where you're like, I feel outside of my own thinking or on the outer edge of my own thinking and it's risky. Like right before emergent strategy cohered and was moving out of me, that was the feeling I had, is that I'm like, I don't make sense in this now. Like something, I need adaptation, and I need like people who are willing to love each other and whatever. And I feel like you're on that precipice right now with your fugitivity work, where it's like, when you write that book that we all need you to write and it's in our hands, it's going to feel differently in your body, because it's not, you're like on the outer edge of collective being, right? Of like, I'm calling us into the next growth edge, and to hold that growth edge in our bodies is so wild, because you're like, trying to have conversations with people where you're like, I can't explain to you the whole thing because it's a book's worth of thought.
Right.
And
I feel uncomfortable. I feel really uncomfortable.
It feels really uncomfortable.
And I've noticed that I've been in a withdrawing kind of like, some of it is book writing. It's like, as you know, it's like you actually have to withdraw from the world in order to write.
Yes.
And so I've been withdrawing anyway and feeling very shy and private about what I'm working on. And but I think some of it is also this, I just feel uncomfortable. I feel really uncomfortable because I know I'm just up to something that is not even, it's not normal even for me. And then I find myself in these conversations where I'm like, do I have anything to say about this that will make sense? Can I make it make sense? And
because I'm like, I haven't written the book, so there's no soundbite for it yet.
Right,
I need to give you a soundbite.
There's no soundbite. There's truly no soundbite. But the things that do make sense are, I really love this piece that you just brought in about like the time is now, and what that made me think was like, oh right, it doesn't matter if we're ready.
It doesn't.
And that's been the like, for years in movement, there's been the like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And like, you got to get ready. Go get ready. And now it's just like, it doesn't actually matter anymore if anyone is ready, because now we're just in the situation that we're in, which means we have the movement that we have the people that we have, and then there's everyone else who's like in the process of being activated. From whatever worldview they were already sitting in. They're in the process of being activated. And I guess that maybe that's what I was trying to get at before. We have to lose our obsession with worldview and ideology.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or we have to lose the idea that people have to already be in our worldview, or that we have to convince them of our worldview. It's like, no, we actually just have to be able to like grab onto each other, knowing that we're not actually seeing things the same way. It's just and
ding, ding,
and
ding,
maybe
ding.
sometimes there'll be room to show each other what we see. Like you know about this. I was telling you about this recently about like my sweetheart and I have this like brick wall metaphor that we use when we're in conflict with each other, where I'll be like, come over here to my side of the brick wall so you can see what the room looks like over here. Okay, now you take me over to your side of the brick wall. We'll look at the way the room looks over there. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Now we kind of can imagine what each other's rooms look like, you know, and it's
Yes.
like that. There's room for that. There's room for that. And
Exactly.
it's not like that is different than like you have to be in my room, you know?
Yeah. Or like that's something that you do when you're like, we're in deep, sustained relationship.
Right.
But if we're like, we've all got to be running away from the fascist right now. We're not running and being like, hey, can you want to come over my room?
Right.
And I'll come over to your room. Like, it's like, no, like I just need to like be like, is your heart beating and do you plan
Is
to
your
live?
heart beating?
Then come
Right.
this way.
Yes.
And we will figure out the rest on the other side.
Right.
Are you down to like lay down your armor or use it for good? Then come this way, you know?
Well,
like,
and there's that whole thing too of like Rebecca Solnit's book, Paradise Built in Hell, that's
Yes.
like about
Yes.
well, like the way societies actually function in the aftermath of disaster and how people
That's
just
right.
automatically do mutual aid and they automatically do this, and they automatically do that.
It's
It's
our
just
nature.
like, it's our nature. And people, I think that maybe one of the things that we don't trust about solidarity is that it will be there. Like
Yes,
we don't
every
even
time.
actually have to, I mean, you can learn it and it's great to practice it and study it, but like it's actually just what will happen as things spiral out of control and collapse. We just have to be available and present for it. You know what I mean? It's like that's
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah, I think it's like that's the part of humanity that I love so much and that I feel like I'm still rooting for us because this thing happens under pressure. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I was thinking about this because I think a couple of conversations ago somewhere we were talking about that mentality of ACAB, like all cops are bastards and like fuck every soldier and fuck all these and fuck, and I was like, yeah, like I have not felt aligned with that for maybe forever, but for definitely for some time where I'm like, I always can think of the exception, right? Where I'm like, I can think of the times when we called 911 because loved ones were in danger and the person who showed up was a cop who had a heart and who had the skill to move us through the situation.
Totally.
And I'm like, I remember that. I look at Aaron Bushnell and I'm like, he was a soldier who had been sent to do all manner of things.
Oof.
And he had signed up for it and he was willing to do it. And then he transformed because he experienced it. And that happens. There's Iraq veterans against the war. There's Vietnam vets against the war. There's so many people that we're like, if we don't give people a chance to like learn in whatever way they learn
Yeah.
that the world is how it is and then have a place to go, then we miss so many people. And I just keep thinking about that right now with these government workers where I'm like,
Oh my God.
these park workers, these like I was like, they are the front line.
They're
and
the
being
front line
so
now.
Brave. They're being so brave. Like, and they're being like, I saw something yesterday where it was like USAID workers walking out of their offices. And like, I cried watching the video and I'm like crying now because it was like, they're walking out of their offices and like all these supporters have just shown up and are just like cheering for them and being like, thank you so much for everything you've done. And like, you don't deserve to be treated the way you're being treated right now. And like knowing that what they're walking out of is like hundreds of thousands of people are going to likely die because of the decisions that are getting made. And I was the stopgap. I was the person who made sure that those people were going to be okay. And I have to leave my job. I'm like, if we cannot figure out a way to be in solidarity with that, then we're never going to figure this out.
Right.
And I see people figuring it out. And I'm like, we will. Yeah. I love what you just said about that. Like, solidarity is actually what emerges naturally under pressure. And we have to remember that and trust that. And then find ways to like soften into what is our work. You know, I keep thinking that like my work is different now than it was 10 years ago necessarily. Like,
Can I ask you a question about that?
yeah, totally.
How did you, like, what are the conditions that made it possible and how did you practice softening into a different type of work? And based on that, what would you say, you know, as you're looking around at what all is like bubbling?
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people about how to soften into this?
I'm going to bring this question right back to you. So be ready. But because I'm like,
giving myself 5 minutes.
I was like, this is a big one, girl. When I think about my young self that like entered movement, I had my perfectionist sensibility still so rigidly around my body, right?
Ooh, yeah.
So I was like, I'm not just going to be a movement. I'm going to be perfect. And I'm going to quickly advance to being an executive director because I am the most perfect nonprofit movement person. And if you tell me that this is the analysis, then I will perfect that analysis and I will learn. So who said that? I will go read that book and I will understand it. And then the more I facilitate, the more I was like, I have to know everything about everything. Like like if someone references something in the room, I've got to like, I know what it is, or I will figure it out and I will bring it back and I will reference, like there was just so much perfection to how I was trying to do movement. So I knew that when things weren't working, that I was like, I have done and learned everything the way they told me to do it. And what's happening is more and more breakdown. So I have to say, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're wrong. And when I started to ask, maybe we're wrong, the softening started when I was like, if we were a part of nature, like in nature, if you're wrong, you go extinct. Like if you're no longer aligned and you can't adapt, you go extinct. Ooh. And I was like, if I'm not just being accountable to the movement people around me, who I know, but if I'm being accountable to the species, then that lens shift was like, it's not okay for movement to be stagnating in this little pond. There's not okay. We need to broaden and so I need to figure out how to soften. And I feel like starting to learn from nature was the great softening, where I was like, there's an okayness to everything actually when you go outside and you're with the living world. So that softened me. Being willing to let go of people who didn't agree with me, and like they really wanted to focus on like tearing me down. I was like, that's okay. That we're just not going to do this in this lifetime and I'm going to let that go.
Right.
Like being willing to be unliked has been a big part of my softening. Is like, I'm going to say things you don't agree with. Like I'm going to be an anti-capitalist who still loves Beyonce. You're going to feel the way you feel about it. And we're all going to continue. Like there's just a softening that's like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, then I think stepping out of formal movement and realizing I still had so much worth. Like, I'm like, oh, there's so much that I still have to offer. There's so much art I still want to contribute. And it feels like in some ways a much purer contribution now. Like, I'm like, I'm not offering this because someone told me to do it. It wasn't my assignment. We didn't strategize this.
Right.
It's just what came up
right.
in my heart.
Right.
We need this, So I think those are some of the things. Yeah. Just being like, and looking at elders like Nikki Giovanni and Toni Morrison and others and being like, they were relevant their whole lives. And they weren't employed by any movement spaces to do that. They just were feeling and articulating and making and feeling and articulating and making.
Right.
And I'm like, that's my path. So now, yeah, what about you?
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff I mentioned, going through those experiences of being like, the assumptions I was told about these people are not holding up when I come face to face with their humanity.
Right.
And so whatever my politic is, it has to include humanity.
Yeah. The place where my brain is going right now is a similar experience that I had where I had a beloved person in my life. I guess we'll have to put a trigger warning at the top of this episode, but I had a beloved person in my life attempt suicide. And, the conditions were such that there was a need to call 911.
Yeah.
And police were the ones who arrived on the scene, and there was a particular officer who was like first to arrive and was like very gruff with me when he first arrived because he needed me to not be physically in the part of the situation that I was in, right?
Yeah.
and then hours later, when the person who attempted was like successfully transported to the hospital, he and I had a debrief conversation. He came back to me and he was like, I want to talk to you about what happened when I first arrived. And I want to just make sure you understand where I was coming from. Mm-hmm. And I want to tell you how much it means to me to be able to do this part of my job, how much I understand what your friend was going through. I've been there before. I know that people don't trust people who look like me. I know you have every reason not to trust someone who's wearing the uniform that I wear. I get it. And here's where I was coming from. And we just like cried together, you know? And it was, for me, a really profound softening to be like, right, like I can't truly believe that we are free and that we are going to survive if I look at any person and say, but not you. You don't deserve to survive. You don't deserve to be free.
That's right.
Like, that's not consistent with my worldview. It's not consistent with my worldview. And I think that the reason why I have this obsession with rigor right now is because I think the place where I keep landing is like, whatever I do, I have to figure out how to be consistent with my worldview. You know, I have to be consistent with my beliefs. I have to be consistent with my beliefs. You know, that's all I can do. I can't make anyone else believe what I believe, but I can be consistent with my own beliefs, which involves humbling myself and being clear about when I'm wrong and being clear about when I'm not. Like, you know, like, because I'm not saying I have to be perfect. What I'm saying is I have to be willing to hold myself to a standard of like, girl, you were off. You know, girl, the way you were behaving just now was, I mean, and parenting has helped me do this. Parenting teenagers is very helpful because my teenagers, they will tell me right away when I'm being a hypocrite. They are so clear and so immediate with their feedback where they're like, oh, you keep saying blah, 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 but that's not what you're doing, Mom. You know? And so it's like, yeah, it's terrible, but it's also sharpening. You know what I mean? It's sharpening me because it's like, this is, and you know, it's like for me, and the way that relates to my martial arts practice is that like a huge part of the being corrected piece is about softening. It's about learning to be vulnerable, right? And that learning to be vulnerable and soften is not inconsistent with like sharpening and becoming more effective. You know what I mean? And so it's like that. It's like that kind of that place is kind of where I'm like living right now. And always being in like the humbling place of just having to be with how wrong so many of my ideas actually are, or how wrong, you know, like just, you know, being today is the day of the boycott and looking around at my life and being like, oh yeah, it's like you really do in America have to make an active choice to not spend money in one day. You know what I mean? Like it is, it's not easy. It's really, it's not easy. And we laugh at people and make fun of people. We laugh at our commercialism, but it's like we don't even realize until we're confronted with a boycott how deeply embedded in every day of our lives. Like, I mean,
it's everything. You know, I recently embarrassed myself deeply because I sent a gift to one of my favorite environmentalists and I sent it through Amazon, like not thinking because I was like, I use Amazon. And she got it and she was like, and then I accidentally forgot to change the address back to myself. So she got like 3 more things. And she was like, we've got to talk. And I was like, we've got to talk. And so for me, I was like, oh yeah, like the number of organizers or activists where I walk in their house and they're like, Alexa's on, or they're ordering Amazon all the time, or they're door dashing all the time, or they went to Walmart to get their supplies for their training, or like, I'm like, we're entrenched. And if we can recognize that we're all entrenched and then be like, the rigor is noticing everything we do to unentrench ourselves and disconnect ourselves and divest. And then we can start to see like, oh, we're just a bunch of humans trying to let go of something that's hurting us. And that's hard.
I like that.
But we can do it, you know.
Say it again.
We are just a bunch of humans trying to let go of something that's hurting us.
Shake these bones, oh we're gonna shake these bones, oh we're gonna shake these bones, oh we're gonna shake these bones. Shake these bones, oh we're gonna shake these bones.
I love you so much.
I love you so much.
Mostly I'm just like, I'm so grateful for you and this friendship of ours and like our intention to do this, to be like, oh wait, we know how to do this.
We know how to do this. And if and it's like, it's truly, if we can't do it, you know,
nobody, literally
nobody.
Zero people can do it. If it's not you and me, that's it.
No, but truly. I love you so much. Okay. I love you so. I do feel that way. All right, and I think we should do a part 2 of this conversation because there's a lot of stuff that we didn't get to talk about that I think would be great for us to talk about.
I think this is the thing. I think that we should have as many of these as we do interviews for the rest of this season.
Totally. Thanks for listening to our show. We're on Instagram at End of the World PC, and we're also on Blue Sky as ourselves.
You can make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/endoftheworldshow. We're also there.
We are all over there. Another incredible thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're an iPhone person, this helps people looking for good new content to find us. Thank you.
How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the perfect Zach Rosen. And transcripts are in our show notes and on our website, endoftheworldshow.org.
A non-toxic perfection. Music for today's show comes from Tunde Alaniran and the Banksons. Period. I love you so much. Okay, wait. I feel closer too.